Hello everyone, welcome back to the Freelance of Freedom YouTube channel. I am so excited today to talk about rates, how to set them, when you should raise them, and answer a lot of commonly asked questions I get around setting your rates as a makeup artist. As a reminder, this video is also for you if you are a photographer, a stylist, a hair artist. A lot of the things we're going to talk about will also apply to you. So make sure you're subscribed and let's get into the video. So one of the biggest mistakes I see when it comes to setting your rate as a makeup artist is that makeup artists don't know what their rate should be, and as a result they never quite set it. And what happens is the client starts to run the show. The client will tell you what your rate is, and it becomes really hard to navigate increasing your rate or getting the rates you want. And of course this makes it incredibly hard to scale as a creative freelancer. And we all know my goal here at Freelance of Freedom is to help create more six-figure freelancers. What are we going to do about this? We are going to learn the correct way to set your rates and everything else you need to know to be able to scale your business with peace and ease. So the first thing you want to do when it comes to setting your rate is you want to study the market you are in. So that means a little bit of market research. What generally are people charging? Look at the cheapest rates you see to the highest rates, and you want to create an average. Will give you an idea of the average rate within that market. And this will be helpful because it will give you a general rule of thumb, a general idea of what rates are currently happening within your market, where you're currently based. Again, I like to get 5 to 6 different rates and then kind of create an average from there, just to give me a guide of my market average. So the next thing you want to do is to take into consideration your experience as an artist. So obviously if you are just starting out, it's probably unlikely you are going to be charging the higher end of the rate. Same goes if you are an artist who has a lot of experience and you already have a lot of demand, you're probably going to be at the higher end of that market average. Now, that being said, when it comes to your rate and your experience, the great news is even if you are starting at a lower rate for that market average, if you start to build demand very, very quickly, guess what? Your rate's going to increase. I always say to my clients when they're like, when should I change my rates? When should I increase them? As a rule of thumb, I always say as you build demand. A lot of artists will fall into this belief that they've been doing it a certain amount of time, so therefore their rate should go up. The problem is if you don't have the demand and people, if you're finding it difficult to get booked at your current rate, increasing your rate isn't going to make it easier. It's actually going to be harder for you to get booked if you cannot get booked at your current rates. Another thing I want to add when it comes into experience, and this may be controversial, is I don't believe personally you need to factor in going to a fancy makeup school or a fancy photography school. I want to make it very clear, I have so many clients who are self-taught creatives who are charging amazingly high rates because they worked on their demand. They didn't use their experience alone as a way to set their rates. They got really comfortable when they first started in their market, working at kind of that industry average or just below, and as they increase their demand, their rates have continued to increase. So the next thing that you're going to want to think about when it comes to setting your rate is what I like to call your USP or your zone of genius. USP just stands for unique selling point. So again, it's thinking about what makes you stand out from all the other artists in your market. And to be very clear, the very fact that no one can be you or do your craft the way you do it, that in of itself is a USP. But I want you to start thinking about, what do I want to be known for? What is the thing that I can do that I really excel at? What is the thing I want to market as that USP? Because that is going to help you become better known as an artist and separate you from the competition. So when I think about USPs, outside of being you and the fact no one else can be you, a unique selling point could be that you are really, really fast. So if I think about production shoots, that might be something that makes you a higher end of the rate, is the fact that you can do a lot of people in a short space of time. The same goes if you have a very big social media following. Perhaps when you're working with brands, you are able to charge a higher rate because of the following you bring, especially if you are working with brands where they want to feature you or they want you to share things within your social media and your social platforms. Another example of a USP could be that you do fashion makeup, but you also do prosthetics. And actually what gets you booked is the fact that you are able to bring in a very unique part of your niche into another market. So for example, you're doing fashion work, but you're also able to do prosthetics, which then books you on campaigns. It books you on things where maybe normally they'd have to hire 2 separate artists, but instead you are the person who is known for doing fashion makeup with prosthetics. Like, that gets to be something that makes you very unique and people know you for. So it goes without saying, there are so many ways to find your USP and create one. And when it comes to discovering yours, it really is about leaning into, why did you become an artist? What is it specifically about your art that you feel really cool to explore and you want to make sure everyone else knows about as well? That's always a great starting point. But remember, no one can be you. That alone makes you unique. The next thing we want to consider when it comes to setting our rates is, of course, our expenses. So, will you have to travel to locations? Are there certain specialist items within your kit that you are going to make sure you are covering your expenses for? It goes without saying that the aim as working makeup artists who are making an income doing this, the goal is not to break even. The goal is to make sure you are making a profit. So think about the expenses you have. What do you need to cover, and add that into your fee. So the last thing to think about when it comes to setting your rate is, do you charge hourly or do you charge daily? Now, in my opinion, when it comes to being a makeup artist, it's actually going to benefit you more charging a half-day rate or a day rate versus hourly. For example, if you are booked to do a 3-hour production job, okay, yes, you're only there 3 hours, but you can't book any other clients that day, especially if you don't know till the day before what hours you would be working. So having half-day rates or full-day rates, generally speaking, is an industry standard. Of course, there are exceptions depending on what kind of makeup artist you are, what kind of creative you are. But as a general rule of thumb, I recommend setting half-day rates and full-day rates. Anything less than 4 hours, generally speaking, is considered a half-day rate, and anything over would be a full day. A full day is generally considered 8 to 10 hours, depending on what area of the industry you are working in. Anything over 10 hours, I would definitely class as overtime. So when it comes to setting your rate, in addition to all those things I've just mentioned, one of the biggest things I want you to think about is, can you get behind it energetically? The energetics of our rates are so important, because if you don't believe in your rate, you're not going to be putting yourself out there. So with that being said, I always recommend, if you need to get behind your rate energetically and you aren't currently, I would actually recommend you lower it until you get to a place where you know you can get booked really easily at that rate. And then obviously you can go back to increasing the rate as your demand increases. Again, general rule of thumb, as your demand increases, so should your rate. One thing I want you to consider as well is, as your rate does increase, hiring your rate or increasing your rate will act as a filter. This is completely normal, it's completely natural, it makes sense. As we grow as artists, there may be some clients who can't come with us on our journey or can no longer afford us. My belief is, if someone really, really wants to work with you, they will find a way, no matter the price. I say this to my clients all the time. People buy houses in areas they can't afford to get their kids into good schools. People will put handbags that are thousands of dollars on a credit card when they know they don't have the money to pay for it. So when someone really, really wants something, they will find a way to work with you no matter the rate. Again, the key is demand. So all I want you to remember is, if your rate feels unrealistic to you, that will come across with the client. The energetics behind your rate are by far the overriding factor in all of this. If you are not getting booked, and the question that comes up time and time again is your rate, I want you to spend some time thinking, who am I marketing to and what is currently not resonating? Am I behind my rate? Because that's a telltale sign. If you aren't behind your rate and you're doubting it, you think it's too high, I would try lowering it, and like I said, get booked out and busy at that lower rate, and then you can increase it knowing, wait, it was so easy for me to get booked at that lower rate, I know people had no problem paying me, because your brain will be on board as you increase the rate. So I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions around setting your rates or rates in general as a creative freelancer, please leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one.